talking to Ray Comfort because I have been very moved by one of his films, most recent one, titled The Exit. You can find more at livingwaters.com. You can watch it at livingwaters.com. And I recommend you do. You may sound, Jan, this is really gloom and doom. Unfortunately, you may think that, but millions and millions of people are struggling. I have an article in front of me. It's a clipping from, again, Christianity Today. I'm glad they're tackling this. 1 in 3 Protestant churchgoers personally affected by suicide. 1 in 3 Protestant churchgoers personally affected by suicide. Goes on to say, 8 in 10 Protestant senior pastors believe their church is equipped to intervene with someone who is threatening suicide. Yet few people turn to the church for help before taking their own lives. We've already discussed that. Ray Comfort, let me come back to you, and I want to ask you a couple more questions here as we wrap things up here. You make a biblical argument against taking one's own life, and I think we need to hit on that before time gets away here, because I think even as we're speaking, there are some, and they are probably believers, who are entertaining the idea of suicide. Give me the biblical argument against this. And you've touched on it, by the way, but I want you to emphasize it.
Yeah, I think, number one, scriptures say very clearly, you shall not kill. It's God's prerogative to take life. Remember in the book of Job just said, God, kill me, God, kill me. I'm so depressed. Things are so rotten. Circumstances are so horrible. But he never once considered taking his own life. Why? Because he feared God. And, the fear of the Lord is probably most despised doctrine in modern-day America, both within the church and outside the church. You shouldn't fear God. He's your buddy. He's your friend. Well, that's not according to the Bible. God is to be feared, and the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. And if you fear God, you put him above your own desires. And I touched on before the Philippian jailer was going to kill himself because he was in a situation that seemed hopeless. But God, when he intervenes, takes hopelessness and gives hope. And so if you inject God in your situation and you stand on Romans 8:28 and you get right with God yourself, you turn from sin and trust in the Savior, then all things will work together for your good. Even the darkness you're going through now, God promises to take you through into the light. So very important. Oswald Chambers, that great writer, suffered from depression. So did Charles Spurgeon. So did Martin Luther. Spurgeon said, I pity a dog who has to suffer what I have had. He said, some are touched with melancholy from their birth. But listen to what he also said. Living in an unbroken series of summer days where no cold mists are dreamed of, it is no great marvel that rheumatic pains fly away and depression of spirit departs. So Spurgeon was actually saying some of the depression we're in is circumstantial. Living in London where it was always misty and foggy made him depressed. So he'd go across to the French Riviera and those bright blue skies helped his depression. So sometimes we're born melancholy and that's the way we are. Other times it's circumstantial. But we should never, ever lose hope, because when we inject God into the situation, he can do the supernatural and give hope to the hopeless. And so if you forsake God in that, you're going to be left in hopelessness. But if you inject them, then you've always got that hope.
You have some closing thoughts. You've touched on some of these closing thoughts that you have as you wrap up the film. Again, folks, you can watch it at livingwaters.com, and particularly if you have a loved one in your life who's suffered from depression, if you're suffering from depression, I can't strongly enough encourage you to go to livingwaters.com and watch this very short film, but it's so insightful. Ray, how did you get these young people that you interviewed, and they were heavily young people, they just so freely shared with you the bluntness of what they'd been thinking, what they'd been doing. One young man, 6 attempts at suicide. What is it about you that brings this out in people?
Must be my accent, I guess. I don't know. I prayed beforehand. Said, Lord, I need young people that'll open up about suicide. And 3 or 4 people did immediately after that as I filmed them. But, we produced a book. It's a very small book, and we make it available very low cost and bulk price. It's called How to Battle Depression and Suicidal Thoughts. And it opens with a very interesting anecdote, and I'll just like to share it with you because it's so powerful. This young man is going to walk across the bridge. A stranger's going to walk across the Golden Gate Bridge, and he sees the young man who's going to take his life. He's sitting on the edge of the bridge. He calls out, don't do it, don't do it. And he says, I'm going to jump. You can't stop me. I've made my mind up. He said, well, if you're going to jump anyway, let me tell you about my friend's brother. And so the guy who's sitting on the edge of the bridge says, tell me about your stupid friend's brother. I'm going to jump anyway. So he said, look, the stranger said, this happened in Utah in 2012. He said, my brother was taken by a group of masked men with knives, and they knocked him out. They cut open his chest and cut out his heart, and no one did a thing to stop them. And the young guy sitting on the edge of the a bridge says, that's disgusting, that's evil, that makes me want to jump, that's the sort of thing that causes my depression, that was evil. And the stranger said, no, it wasn't, it was good. And the guy says, what are you talking about? He says, well, those men that took my brother were surgeons. The knives they had were scalpels, and they had masks on, and they knocked him out with anesthesia, and they took out his bad heart and gave him a good heart. And the young man sitting there says, oh. And the stranger says, oh, indeed. He said, you just changed your mind from something being evil to being good in a matter of seconds because I gave you information. He said, I've got information that's going to change your mind about jumping, and all I want you to do is listen because it will change your mind. And then a discourse begins between the two of them where the young man, after some time, reaches up his hand. He says, will you take my hand and lift me out of this place? Because he was given information that he didn't have. And that's what people that are suffering from suicide, that's the dilemma. They don't have the information they need that will change the paradigm, that will do a paradigm shift and change their attitude. And so that's why we want people to watch the film, even though it's a distasteful subject, and get the book and give it out to people, because one of the scariest signs that someone's suicidal is that there's no signs. You know, you can have someone that's just bouncing along and enjoying life, and they kill themselves, and you didn't realize what was deep within their thoughts. And so we want to prevent people from committing suicide and do something to stop this terror within our nation.
Okay, so the book, How to Battle Depression and Suicidal Thoughts, that's only available at livingwaters.com, is that right?
It's available at Amazon, too. You can get it through there, and it's just a very small book, very easy read, and it's written in a New Zealand accent.
That's great. Okay, you can't call us, folks. You got to go to livingwaters.com or amazon.com. And I would recommend it because it's a very short book, and I think you combine the book with this little film. And Ray, they can order the film and watch it just via their DVD player, correct?
Yeah, they can order it on DVD, or they can watch it freely on YouTube also.
Yeah. For folks who may not be the most computer literate, it'd be best if they perhaps ordered the DVD. And is that best purchased then through livingwaters.com?
That's right, yes.
Okay, folks, we're not giving out phone numbers right now, so you can find someone with a computer perhaps to help you with it. Ray, you've got another film coming up. I want to give you just a few minutes here to talk about it because we're heading into Christmas season. Why have you targeted this newest film coming out shortly? Why have you targeted Christmas? I've seen it online, by the way. I realize it's a great witnessing opportunity, but talk to me about it here for a couple minutes.
Yeah, it's called Christmas Gone Viral. We're going to release the movie on livingwaters.com in the very near future, in the next week or so. It's because 1/3 of the world celebrates Christmas. Yes. You know, when Paul stood up in Athens, he noticed the whole of Athens was given to idolatry, but he didn't preach against their idolatry. He actually quoted Greek poets. You think, what did he do that for? Well, he wanted to relate to his hearers. He wanted a springboard to take the gospel to them, and quoting Greek poets was a way to relate. Well, with 1/3 of the world, that's 2 billion people celebrating Christmas, there is the ultimate springboard of the gospel. They are celebrating the birth of Jesus. So we made a movie where I sent different people from different countries out with cameras onto the streets to use Christmas as a springboard. And so you see about 6 or 7 different countries, there's different people and accents. It's quite delightful. Yeah. Say, do you celebrate Christmas? They say, yeah. Say, do you know whose birthday it is? Yes. Do you know what Jesus came to do? And they say, no, not really. And so the gospel gets explained because of this wonderful opening called Christmas. And so we want people to use this. It's going to be broadcast on a national television program to 190 countries, should I say.
Really?
In mid-December, but it's going to be released before that. And it's the sort of thing you can give to relatives and say, please watch this. It'll give you a different perspective on Christmas.